Okay, let's get to Daniel Harris, who joins us this morning to give us his reaction. What's your take on this, Daniel, as somebody who knows Jose Mourinho very well from his time at Manchester United and the machinations and the tectonic plates of the dressing room? What the hell happened here? And is he the right man for this Spurs team right now?
Someone needs some medical attention. I'm absolutely staggered that anyone thought this behaviour would be a good idea. I can understand in some ways why they've got rid of Pochettino. In other ways, I think it's the most ludicrous thing that anyone's ever done. And I'll explain why. If things are too far gone with Pochettino and they feel that either there's a problem with the players or there's a problem with the board, I guess those two things are permanent. Now, whether there should be a problem with the players and whether there should be a problem with the board and whose fault that is part of a debate as to whether or not Pochettino should have been fired. But getting rid of Pochettino, who's done such a great job at Spurs, is ridiculous, because the reason why they are where they are and why their standards have gone up is because of him. And for them to basically not back him financially until last summer, him to do brilliantly and them to fire him at the first sign of on-pitch trouble doesn't make a lot of sense. And then to replace him with yesterday's man, Mourinho, nothing that we've seen from Mourinho in his last two jobs has suggested he's ever going to learn and he's ever going to change. And nothing has suggested that the way that he manages players is going to be modified according to the way that things have changed. And now that he doesn't have this insane coterie of focused winners like he had at Inter and like he had at Chelsea. So also the other thing that Mourinho always needs is money. And Levy has very particularly not given Pochettino money. So if he gives it to Mourinho, then the question would be, why didn't you give it to Pochettino? And if he doesn't, then it's just setting himself up for more aggravation.
Well, Owen.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's like yesterday's man, there's probably some truth to that. But like, do you subscribe to the theory at all, Daniel, that Jose in his second season does provide a bounce, that Levy does analyse what has gone before in a person's career, should probably see these problems coming, but also can see the benefits that he can bring for a very short amount of time, the sort of perhaps false energy that he brings to a dressing room at the start, but it's energy nonetheless. It's a different, perhaps, mood that Pochettino's been preaching at a very important juncture. It's before a transfer window. Every transfer window is going to be important now for the foreseeable future for Tottenham Hotspur, especially when it comes to those players who are potentially on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, Spurs might end up with a League Cup or a Europa League in the first season or two, and if that's what they want, then fair enough. I think that one of the problems they might find, and I've been previously told that the players between them who know that they could be earning more money and playing for better clubs had agreed that they would all stay as long as Pochettino stayed. Kane in particular is good mates with Pochettino. I'm not certain that Spurs will be able to persuade those players to stay on Spurs wages now that Pochettino has gone. And Mourinho doesn't have that. He's not an emollient individual. And so the kind of things that he demands of players are not necessarily the kind of things that players want to do. And whether or not he can get the best out of that squad, or whether the squad will even want to hang around to find out, remains to be seen at best. So if Spurs' target is top four, then I think that is probably out of reach this season. So perhaps they might manage that next season, but perhaps not. And perhaps they might win some minor trophies, which are, as someone whose team won minor trophies under Mourinho, I enjoyed those very much. But that's not what Spurs are trying to do. They want a manager to build something. They're trying to build something, and nothing in Mourinho's, not even recent history, nothing in Mourinho's history as a manager suggests that he will build something. It suggests he'll turn up for a bit, there'll be some success, and then he'll leave usually a significant mess. That, to me, is not the way that modern football is going, and not what Spurs need. Spurs need focused, happy Pochettino. And the most sensible way out of this situation would have been for Daniel Levy to appreciate that the main man at the club was not him, but Pochettino. And the timing of this departure also seems kind of strange, in that if things were too far gone, and that was known to be the case, then they would have fired Pochettino at the beginning of the international window, because then Mourinho could have come in and he would have had a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was, with some players gone but other players around to get his feet under the table, to get settled, to start meeting everyone. The fact that it's happened right at the end of the international window suggests a little bit like something has happened. And if something has happened, then to me, Daniel Levy's most important job as Tottenham, whatever he is, Tottenham kisser up to Joe Lewis, well, I'm not sure what the official title is, but Daniel Levy's most important job was keeping Mauricio Pochettino happy, because Mauricio Pochettino was Spurs' biggest asset. And what we've seen from him is that he has earned the credit to be able to stay, because what you see with football teams is, Fergie always used to say this, the cycle of a football team is roughly 4 seasons. And after that, you need to start refreshing things. And Pochettino needs to start refreshing things. He started refreshing things in the summer. And as far as I can see, he's Tottenham's best manager, who's had Tottenham's best teams since David Pleat's team in 1987. He has earned the right to be the person who gets to refresh that. Now, he might have needed a talking to, and he might have needed to be told to shut up complaining in public. But if during the previous 4 seasons, Levy had respected his achievements properly, then there would never have been that problem. It may be that Pochettino had mentally checked out of the job and intended to leave in the summer, in which case, given where Spurs are, it probably did make sense to fire him now. But to fire him now and bring in Mourinho makes no sense, because in a lot of ways, Mourinho is not only the opposite of what Pochettino is, he's the opposite of what Tottenham need.
Well, Mauricio Pochettino's been sulking for the past few months, ever since the Champions League final. You talk about Daniel Levy perhaps looking to find the smiling, happy Pochettino once again. Like, he's given himself a good few months. He's given himself a whole summer off. I'm sure there are tons of conversations that have happened. I'm sure you're right that something has happened over the last couple of days. But I'm also sure that Daniel Levy has said to himself, I can't get that smiling, happy Pochettino back on side, given the resources that I feel I have at my disposal. Now, in terms of that point you make at the end about them being the exact opposites, Jose Mourinho is also prone to sulk a bit. I'm not sure they actually that different when it comes to things. I think they also have a style of play that can grind players down at times. I think that's what happened here with Mauricio Pochettino. It's kind of worn thin at a point. That tends to happen with Jose Mourinho as well. Granted, I've just backed myself into a corner here where I'm making the case against Jose Mourinho, but it's more on your own last point about it, how different they really are. And then also kind of challenging you on that point about the smiling, happy Mauricio Pochettino. I just think Daniel Levy thought the goose was cooked. There's no way we're getting this great, charismatic character back and also maintaining the players that we have in our dressing room.
That might be true, but if you can't keep Mauricio Pochettino happy, what in the world makes you think that you'll be able to keep Jose Mourinho happy? Like, there's no rationale that suggests that, unless you give Mourinho all the things that you denied Pochettino that Pochettino had earned. Look, like, Mourinho might turn up and make me look stupid. Like, if original Chelsea Inter Mourinho turns up, he was one of the greatest managers of all time, and only an idiot would fail to recognise that that was so. He did a phenomenal job at Inter, particularly. But Chelsea had all the advantages. Chelsea were finished fourth when he turned up. He had a ludicrous amount of money. And what he did at Chelsea was he shaped a team that was still winning things 5, 6, 7 years after he left them. Like, that's amazing. He instilled in them particular values of professionalism and of competing that were amazing. But the players that he had there were very particular types of players. He had absolutely driven, maniacal, focused, lunatic winners. He had Terry, Lampard, Drogba, Cech. I don't think that it's quite possible that we'll never see a squad like that in English football again, of those kinds of personalities. And Mourinho hasn't really shown an ability to agitate and motivate the different kinds of personalities that you're more likely to find in a dressing room. And at Tottenham, that's what he's going to find. Like, maybe he'll do really well with Harry Kane and Dele Alli, but will that necessarily work with Tanguy and Ndombele and Giovanni Lo Celso? We don't know. And there's nothing to suggest that Spurs have just that particular kind, that they're dominated by that particular kind of personality. And there's nothing to suggest that Mourinho has changed, because, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I thought that when Mourinho got the United job, if he was unable to change for that, then he was never going to change, because that was the job he hankered after for years. And if he failed at it, he was very unlikely to ever get a job of similar magnitude. And he could not do anything. He could not manage to change himself. And he never particularly tried. He gave the first press conference where he basically called out Wayne Rooney for not being any good in midfield. And you thought, okay. Then he went and bought 4 players in the first summer that sort of suggested that he was trying to sign players to back himself into a corner, such that he would have to play a different kind of football. And he couldn't do it. So then he went out and bought Nemanja Matic and Romelu Lukaku and tried to play Mourinho type of football, but without Mourinho type of players. And he couldn't do that either. In the meantime, he managed to force them to a couple of trophies and to second place in the league, but a very distant second place. But nothing that we saw was anything different to what we saw from the Mourinho towards the end at Real Madrid and the Mourinho in the second spell at Chelsea. He was unable to change. And although drama, cinema, literature are basically predicated on change, you have these characters and then they go on a journey and at the end they emerge different people, it's probably more comparable to what we see from usually in a series. The characters do not change because that is more akin to real life. People do not change. They become modified versions of themselves, but we are who we are. And nothing about Mourinho in particular, who has very strong characteristics and is very confident in the strength and those characteristics, suggests that he's able to do anything different. And I tell you what, I don't buy that Mourinho football is outdated. People like to talk about that, and I think that is nonsense. If you gave him his first Chelsea team with Terry and Carvalho and Lampard and Makelele and Essien and Drogba and Robben and Duff and Cech, you'd see a team that if they didn't win the league, they'd come very, very close to winning the league, because that is a brilliant team that would be brilliant in any generation of football. But if you take those players away from him, his ability to improvise, to assess the circumstances that he finds himself in, and to gel different kinds of players and different personalities into different systems, like nothing that we've seen from him over the last 5 years suggests that is something he's going to do.
And to sign those players again, to rediscover them. Look, I actually feel like the Mourinho and Spurs element to this is going to end up being the B storyline. And the A storyline is where Mauricio Pochettino ends up, because as I was saying a little bit earlier on, when Pochettino signed his new deal, many clubs around the world would have paid whatever the compensation Daniel Levy wanted to get him out of there, one of whom, you suspect, would have been Manchester United. Surely Manchester United this morning are having a long, long conversation about where exactly they are and how this manager has suddenly become available. He is one of the best managers in world football at the moment. He is perfect for the type of project they are currently in the midst of. He has the force of personality to withstand whatever is required to do that job. He plays great football. He's well connected. He speaks many different languages. He's exactly the type of manager you would want if you were the owners or the people charged with running Man United. Surely the person who's most at risk now, because of what's happened, must be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Perhaps. I mean, I think that, things have improved for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer lately. I mean, I was told that Pochettino was going to come to United last summer, and he thought he was coming to United last summer, and then Solskjaer went on that unusually brilliant run when he took over, and obviously plans then changed. I would be surprised if United pulled the trigger now, and I would be surprised if they did. If things went bad over the next 2 months, then yeah, you would expect to see Pochettino in as soon as possible, because another terrible run would suggest that Solskjaer is not the man for the job. But what we've seen over the last, United have won 5 of the last 7. They've started playing some good football and they've got their players back. And the combination of those factors suggests that if you wanted to have faith in Solskjaer, it wouldn't be hard to find a reason to have that faith. I suppose what they could do is they could make Solskjaer director of football, because the work that he's done suggests that is a job for which he is suited, in that he seems to have a good idea of who the good players are and who the not good players are, and perhaps less of an idea about how to coach the team and how to get the team playing in a particular way in all kinds of circumstances. But I think that personally, I'm reserving judgment on Solskjaer, even though I am suspicious. I'm reserving judgment because in the first part of the season, he was missing so many of his first team players that I think any manager would struggle to get results in that circumstance. And when he's had his players available, United have actually played pretty well. So he is under threat, but I don't think he's under immediate threat. What will happen is that if things don't go well between now and the end of the season, then you would expect him to lose his job, and you'd expect Pochettino to come in, and that would suit United as well, because Pochettino would now be free. But I don't think in the short term Solskjaer's under threat.
Well, the director of football thing is exactly what I was talking about in the office over the last 24, 48 hours when it became clear that this might actually happen. That's the perfect role for Solskjaer, and it's a way of kind of saying, look, we see you as somebody who in the future will have enough experience maybe in 4 or 5 years after Mauricio Pochettino restores us to our former glory, it could actually work out perfectly. But the trouble is, if you wait until the end of the season, every other chairman in world football is going to be looking at Mauricio Pochettino because suddenly he is available, he's not going to cost any compensation, and he's excellent.
Maybe, because how many jobs are there in world football that Pochettino would consider a step up or a horizontal step for him now? And how many of those jobs are likely to become available between now and the end of the season? I mean, the obvious one is actually Arsenal. I feel like Unai Emery is in much more danger of losing his job and in much more need of the sack than Pochettino is. And it would be, am I allowed to swear at 8:06 in the morning? It would be one of the greatest fuck yous of all time if Pochettino went to Arsenal. And I think that...
And what a success he would be there.
It's a thought experiment and something I actually think is going to happen. But if the animosity that Arsenal fans feel towards Pochettino, I imagine, is not similar to the animosity that Spurs fans felt for George Graham, and that they feel for Jose Mourinho. And there were obviously those rumours about Mourinho a few weeks ago. And if I were an Arsenal fan, I would be tempted, I would say, by Pochettino.
Yes.
In the same way as a Manchester United fan, I would, if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got fired, I would in some way be tempted by Brendan Rodgers, even though he's someone of whom I have made sport over the years, and he was Liverpool manager. I can appreciate that Brendan Rodgers absolutely knows something and is a great coach and has done great jobs at Swansea, at Liverpool, and at Leicester.
Yeah.
If I was an Arsenal fan, I would be very, very tempted by Pochettino, and I imagine if I was on the Arsenal board and didn't feel the personal animus towards Tottenham that Arsenal fans feel,
and none of them
I would be thinking very carefully about doing that. And if I was Pochettino and I got offered the Arsenal job, I would be carnally excited.
Yeah. All right, good stuff, Daniel. Thanks for giving us all that this morning. 7 minutes past 8, and if there's any little ears, then we apologise. But I mean, it was true. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Do you want my left arm now? Because I'll give it for Mauricio Pochettino to come to Arsenal. John Duggan is with us in studio. Big Jose Mourinho fan.
I don't know about big Jose Mourinho fan, but I'm not as negative about good morning about this as everybody else seems to be on Twitter last night. Because on the 25th of September, on offtheball.com, we wrote about this. We said that Jose Mourinho could be the next Tottenham Hotspur manager.
There's your piece there. Could Jose Mourinho be the next Tottenham Hotspur manager?
The 25th of September. We're now on the 19th of November, 20th of November.
Yeah.
20th.
Yeah.
What else can you make happen? What else can you manifest destiny?
12 profitable years out of 18 at Cheltenham. Another profitable year next March. Golf tips on Off the Ball every Thursday. All these things could happen. We just need to make them happen, like Jose Mourinho going to Spurs this morning.
So you believe in the law of attraction?
I believe in my gut. First of all, I feel very grateful for Mauricio Pochettino giving me some of the best days of my life. Like Ajax, the Champions League semi-final, Lucas Moura putting the ball in the last kick of the game. It was just one of the most amazing experiences as a sports fan. I was at the Old White Hart Lane in 2016 when Tottenham beat the proverbials out of Manchester City, Guardiola's first defeat in England. Tottenham were incredible that day, and they didn't even have Harry Kane in the team. And I think it probably symbolises that it's just reached the end of the road with Pochettino. The way he plays football, his philosophy of huge physical press, running, and when you're not replenishing the squad, which Tottenham haven't been doing.
Yeah, so I don't think the style of football reached the end of the road because it's very effective for Liverpool. I think that they didn't back him in the transfer market.
Especially in 2018. Like Liverpool were signing Alisson and Van Dijk and all these kind of players 2018 summer. Spurs didn't sign anybody. They've got a wage bill, probably 100 million less than the big clubs. Eventually, the kind of the drawbridge begins to creak, and then the wood kind of rots, and then it falls into the sea. And that is not Pochettino's fault. Tottenham didn't replenish as an elite club should do, and maybe the stadium is an excuse for that. But like Levy and Mourinho and the meeting of money, that to me is
spending 12 quid to sack your manager, or 12 million quid, I should say, to sack your manager.
And he's always wanted them, apparently, Levy. But the meeting of Mourinho, Levy, and money is an equation that I'm looking forward to seeing the result of.
Yeah, because Mourinho needs money to manage. We know that he wants multiple. He wants 2 players in every position, and then he gets unhappy with players he has bought very quickly and decides, no, you're not going to be part of my team. And his judgment has not been great with a load of these players in recent seasons. But anyway, where is the suggestion that Daniel Levy is going to give the money to Jose Mourinho that he needs to make this work? Because there's been no track record of that money being made available to any manager.
This summer they made money available. This summer they spent money. Now, granted, it ended with Paulo Dybala not coming to the club, and by all accounts,
88 million this year, right?
But like, just to finish that point, by all accounts, that was something that actually got to Mauricio Pochettino. So it's hard to know exactly what this injection of cash means, how big an injection of cash it really was in the context of.
And remember Pochettino saying they should call me head coach, not manager, because I'm not in charge, I'm not making the decisions.
Pochettino was doing a lot of that. Even back to a Leicester game a couple of years ago, he was undermining the chairman a bit. I don't think Daniel Levy likes that kind of.
Sure, he doesn't.
He doesn't like that. But Daniel Levy is, I think, regards himself as one of the most successful businessmen in world football, and he probably, as a businessman and a profit man, he probably is. The only thing I think that might change the dynamic is that Spurs have reached a real crossroads now. Do they want Harry Kane to stay at their club? Do they want him to be an elite club? Do they want to be in the Champions League every year? And the only thing that might change the thing is that Daniel Levy for years has always wanted Mourinho at his club, and maybe Daniel Levy's ego doesn't feel under threat because this is his guy, and his ego will say, you know what, well, I've got my guy now, and now my ego can tell me that actually I want to spend a bit more money. And like, it's not that they're lacking money. Joe Lewis, the ultimate owner of Tottenham, is like a billionaire. So it's not like they don't have the money. They have the money, but they've been always running very, very successfully as a profit enterprise. They're probably the most profitable club. I think they were the most profitable club in the last figures that I saw in the Premier League.
A lot of billionaires made it by not giving their money away.
That's why we're not billionaires. That's why we're sitting here and off the ball.
By making, good business decisions and not flashing the cash on a vanity project like.
Well, that's why you have the petrodollars of Manchester City. It is a vanity project. And it is a different situation at Tottenham.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And I'm not sure if Joe Lewis is going to suddenly decide that he wants to spend 300 million to catch up with everybody else. But look, maybe the stadium gives them enough.
Well, then you become Arsenal. That's the choice.
Well, exactly. But maybe every year in the Champions League is exactly what Spurs want, and that's exactly what Daniel Levy wants, and that's maybe that's what Mourinho's been brought in to do, as opposed to actually trying to mount a title challenge.
There's a couple of things here. Mourinho has been always a better underdog manager than he's been a manager of clubs with massive reputations and massive expectations. So Porto, underdog manager, wins Europa League, Champions League. I know it's a long time ago, but he went and he did it with Inter. Inter Milan hadn't won a Champions League since the 60s. Chelsea, the first time around, hadn't won a title in 50 years. I know he effectively could buy anybody he wanted. But they also played great football back then.
They
Drogba,
did, yeah.
Robben.
Yeah.
Now, it is a very long time ago. But what would Manchester United fans give for second place in the table right now, which he brought them to? He won a Europa League. He wins things. Whatever you hate his style or you hate what he's about, he wins things. And Tottenham did not win anything under Pochettino. They haven't won a trophy. They won a measly League Cup. They won 2 League Cups in the last 20 years. The Worthless Cup, the Worthington, whatever it's called these days.
He was in the Champions League final 5 months ago.
I know. But from a perspective of I'm just thinking of trophies without thinking about anything else about Pochettino. Pochettino's been the most successful manager since Bill Nicholson at Tottenham. Even more successful, I would argue, than Keith Birkinshaw, who won trophies, who won a UEFA Cup, who won 2 FA Cups. Pochettino's been more successful because football now is a global game. Champions League final, as you say, second finish in the league since best in '63. And like, there was about 10 years ago, I was going absolutely bananas down at Camden Street, freaking out, ringing my nephews and my niece and my brother-in-law, who are all Spurs fans, when Peter Crouch scored at Manchester City to put us in.
I was just saying, it was one of the biggest things, and that was Harry Redknapp, right?
Yeah.
And Pochettino made that a matter of course.
A matter of habit. And something you would take for granted. Like, I went to see Tottenham play AC Milan, the last 16 in the Champions League, probably must have been 8 or 9 years ago. And that even hearing the Champions League music at White Hart Lane was such a huge thing. And that's something that Pochettino made regular and punching above, totally punching above.
Are you making the case that that's why they should have kept Pochettino?
Pochettino should have stayed. They should have made it.
I don't know. I think they were way past that point of getting back to that level again.
3 months of bad stuff happening since they were in this season, and it's the start of June. We're in November since they were in the Champions League final. Like, he signed a new 5-year deal in May 2018. So this is a very expensive way of getting rid of an asset that at that time in May 2018 you could have sold to Man United for 20-25 million. Like, they were willing to pay massive compensation to get him.
But it didn't seem like he would lose the dressing room in 2018. It didn't seem that it actually seemed that would be the last thing possible.
And those stories coming out though, but like, you've got to wonder who benefits from those stories coming out. Daniel Levy benefits from those stories coming out. This was irreparable damage done. I think it's your point that actually Daniel Levy fell in love with the idea of Jose Mourinho, became intoxicated by that whole thing at some point along the way, and has now made a decision that is not in keeping with his track record at all. His track record is pragmatic,
parsimonious.
Yeah, like this is the opposite of that, because he's going to have to give Mourinho loads of money. Mourinho's not coming in here and saying...
But he's no other choice, Daniel Levy. Otherwise, it's going to be Arsenal. It's going to be sixth in the league forever. And that's where Tottenham were. And now Levy's been there. It's been since 2001. He should know. He's extremely intelligent. He's got a first-in-land economy from Cambridge. He should know that this is now the crossroads of Tottenham. And if Mourinho's the guy, he's got to give him the money. So, and we'll know very quickly whether he's given the money or not.
But your point is separate to the point about whether or not it's correct to sack Mauricio Pochettino at the moment. Okay, it's not in keeping. It's not in keeping with Daniel Levy's philosophy on how to spend money, paying 12 million quid to sack a manager. That doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. I'm talking about the sacking of Pochettino. Just because perhaps he wants to leak those stories.
Hang on, has he not earned the right?
Doesn't mean that he hasn't lost the dressing room.
All the points we just made, like it being absolutely a dramatic thing that this club would ever qualify for the Champions League. Mauricio Pochettino turned that into...
Expectations change.
They do change on the back of this guy's genius. When you weren't investing in the squad, he brought them to a Champions League final. Like, he turned mediocre players into... Okay, I don't really care about how often you play for England, but into the backbone of an England team that ends up doing, essentially, finally, quite well at a major tournament. Backbone by his players, who all learned how to become men under Pochettino. And if you have a bad 3 or 4 months, you're then entitled to say, okay, I'm going to take a step back here and I'm going to fix this. Because I'm Mauricio Pochettino. I'm a brilliant manager. I can do this.
If you can fix it. But the situation seems irreparable.
Do you need the funds to fix it? And
it seems irreparable because these stories are being spun to justify the decision. The truth of, and that's all going to come out now and think, this was absolutely... But all they had to do was win 2 or 3 games after the international break and suddenly everything's fine again. Because that's how football works. Every crisis is an absolutely massive crisis when it's written down in black and white, when the harsh things people say. But there's fights in training grounds all the time. And if you have a good, strong manager, which Pochettino clearly was, you can navigate through this. He just didn't get a chance. I don't know. I think Spurs are going to regret this, especially if Man United have many balls and go and decide, right, look, all that great stuff that we were saying about you, Ole Gunnar, I'm sorry about that. This guy's our guy.
You see, that's a separate point. I would agree with that. I would say that of the available managers now in world football, Mauricio Pochettino is probably the #1 candidate. I think if you're Bayern Munich looking for a manager, you're looking at Mauricio Pochettino. I think if you're any club looking for a manager, he is the guy you want. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that keeping him at Tottenham Hotspur was the correct thing to do. I can see how it's a harsh thing. I can see how football is such a thing that it can change very quickly if he gets a couple of good results after the international break. But I just think that the evidence that has been leaked, granted, and perhaps spun, would suggest that this wasn't something that could have been turned around. This was something that was not just based on Mauricio Pochettino's genius as a manager. It was also based on this group of players that he had bonded so tightly together that they had got not far beyond the sum of their parts, but it definitely got the sum of their parts together. He was going to lose those players, but he'd certainly lost the bond that existed between those players because it had worn thin. Not a great kind of contradiction about all of this.
Did it wear thin because they weren't getting paid enough? Did it wear thin because they weren't allowed to join Real Madrid when they wanted to? Like, why did it wear thin?
It wore thin, I think, because they didn't replenish the squad enough 2 years ago. Like, Tottenham didn't lose a game at home at Hard Lane that last season, 2016-17. They were amazing that season, but they didn't replenish the squad. And I think, remember Arsenal reached the Champions League final 2006? Were they at their best that season? No, they weren't. They were probably a couple of years beyond it. And I think Tottenham this year were a couple of years beyond it. And because the club has always been run extremely tightly as a business, and Tottenham actually were in an inflated position because of Pochettino. They were in an inflated position relative to their wage structure, relative to the amount of money they spend on players. Harry Kane is a kind of Harry Winks. These are guys who come through academies. Like Harry Kane was almost Dele Alli from Milton Keynes. These weren't signed for 100 million. So the Bale was the last time that really Spurs did a huge bit of business in the transfer market. So Levy, it's all about Levy changing because he's got his eyes are fluttering at Jose Mourinho. Levy will have to be un-Daniel Levy-like for things to change at Tottenham and for Mourinho to have a chance. Otherwise, it will become an Arsenal situation. I would worry, by the way, for Troy Parrott at Tottenham. with the way Mourinho has never been about the kids, has he?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he claims he did really good stuff with Rashford and really helped his game.
No, he shattered Rashford's confidence.
I thought so too. Like, certainly that's the way spin
Look at the way
works.
Rashford's playing now.
I think Jose Mourinho could still be a good manager. I'm just not sure that this is the right situation for him right now. Unless there is absolutely tons of money coming, and Daniel Levy's breaking the habit of a lifetime. Just on Parrott, because there's a piece in the Examiner today.
Yeah, Liam Brady, yeah.
Liam Brady saying that a January loan move could actually be the best thing for him. This might now hasten that.
Yeah, it might.
And maybe that's his chance to go. And I don't know if a Premier League team comes in from, it's unlikely at this stage, but certainly a run in the Championship will be great for him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Played well last night as the under-21s.
Also, he's got physical presence.
Hammered Sweden.
Yeah, physical presence is what Troy Parrott has, and from what I know about him, he's just a poacher. He just scores goals, a bit like Harry Kane actually. Just finds a way to get the ball in the net. I just hope wherever he goes, if he does go, that it's somewhere that there's a good feeder system with Tottenham. Like Pochettino really had a lot of faith in him, but Pochettino, that was his hallmark. It was like the players like Winks, and he polished Moussa Sissoko into a footballer. So he did great things, but I think the die was cast a couple of years ago. I think the Champions League run did kind of paper over a lot of the cracks, which with the structural way the club is run, and the club needs to be run a bit differently. Lovely business. I've been to the new stadium. It's amazing. I'm so, I'm generally a happy person to be a Tottenham fan, although I do go on Twitter and rant about it. But generally, I'm quite a happy person to be a Spurs fan, because I know how dire it was in the 90s and that kind of thing.
But it's interesting you say that, John. Like, I think you're right. And you look at some of Pochettino's pre-match press conferences last year. I think it was before the second leg against Ajax, when he starts kind of making sounds about how he'll retire if they win the Champions League, or how he'll take some time off. Like, they're not the sounds of a manager who's on the crest of a wave, on the verge of doing something more special than any Tottenham Hotspur manager has ever done before. I think that is the definition of papering over the cracks. That it would have been interesting to see what would have happened last season had that Champions League run not happened, had this decision perhaps...
Well, he would have been gone sooner.
Yeah, it would have had to be taken in the summer, perhaps.
But as Ger would probably argue, and you can see the very good argument, that he definitely needs as much time as he wants and as much money as he wants to rebuild again, but he didn't get that. And then the other side of the argument, which I can also see, is that he is a Bielsa-style manager, that there is maybe a shelf life to the way he manages. Like, if Leeds United qualified for the Premier League, reached the Premier League, and a benefactor was in there to give him loads of money, that's the kind of club I would see for Pochettino at, building something big at Leeds United. Maybe not even Manchester United.
Connor Joyce says, have you seen Spurs play this season, Ger? They've been woeful. They're 14th. Pochettino's been ratty since the Champions League final last year. Mourinho can do something with this Spurs squad. Well, we're going to see, because his first game is at West Ham this weekend.
Of all teams.
Yeah.
Can I just make one point on that?
Nolan says, bad news for Troy Parrott. Keep your comments rolling in.
The shelf life thing, it's interesting. Now, granted, I'm coming around to the idea...
But Ferguson would have said about shelf life.
Yeah, but what other top-class manager in the world right now is renowned for having a shelf life? Jose Mourinho. This thing is going to go in a similar manner to Mauricio Pochettino eventually, with the players getting fed up with him. I just think that there is enough of I think Levy's smart enough to know that there is also a 2-year bounce before the shelf life starts to become a bit of an issue. Maybe a 1-season bounce in some respects. So, I don't know, but I think with that, I think it does come from a big punch at the start. Like you call, like the rotting that perhaps happens after a period of time under Mauricio Pochettino. Like, Pochettino has been prone to sulk. He's been in dour form, as that texter commented, since the Champions League final. Jose Mourinho is also known to sulk. I think these two men are closer in personality than a lot of people think.
Mourinho and Pochettino.
Yeah.
I'd say there's no doubt that at some point along the way, Jose Mourinho's going to lose that dressing room, because that's how that works.